So let's talk about adverbial infinitives when they dangle and when they're split. Now, we've come across the dangling infinitive before, and we know that's true because with any kind of verbal, it has to agree with the subject. So we can have a dangling gerund, we can also have a dangling infinitive. So to say, to convince students of the value of taking advanced grammar, 10th graders had to sit through an exciting video depicting the fun of board races. Well, it looks great, except it's a dangling infinitive. Let's talk about why. Well, the infinitive, which is to convince students of the value of taking advanced grammar, has to agree with the subject. And the subject is 10th graders. Remember, the subject has to work with all verbs. So 10th graders works for the back half of the sentence. 10th graders had to sit through an exciting video. But it doesn't work for the front half because the 10th graders aren't convincing students. So therefore, we'd say, well, then who's convincing the students? More likely Mr. Marsh is, but he's not in the sentence. So therefore, this infinitive is said to dangle because it has nothing to connect to. So some people say, well, why wouldn't you just be add Mr. Marsh's? Oh, that looks dandy, doesn't it? To convince students of the value of taking advanced grammar, Mr. Marsh's 10th graders. Yay! Except that's wrong. Because if you think about it, 10th graders is still your subject, and Mr. Marsh's is just a determiner for that word 10th graders. You've not changed the subject. You've added this glorious little word, but you've not changed the subject at all. And that won't work for an infinitive. So I'm like, okay, what can I do? Well, as we know, we can always make a new subject. So if I said to convince the students of the value of taking advanced grammar, Mr. Marsh forced the 10th graders to sit through. That would make more sense because now I'm the one who's forcing and I'm the one who's also convincing. So in this case, the subject of Mr. Marsh, see if I can get my little highlighter to show up here. Oh, that's not what I wanted. That's ugly. It's a laser pointer. Mr. Marsh is the one who's forcing and Mr. Marsh is the one who's convincing. Great. But you know there's another solution? Remember, we can always give an infinitive its own subject. So you could keep the original sentence and say, for Mr. Marsh to convince students of the value of taking advanced grammar, 10th graders had to sit through an exciting video depicting the fun of board races. Adding for plus a person's name will always make the problem disappear. And sometimes you're like, well, what if it's in order to? What do you do then? Easy. Just simply say, in order for Mr. Marsh to convince. So in this case, once again, Mr. Marsh is the subject of the infinitive to convince, and 10th graders can stay right where they were, working with the verb had. All right. So another problem that we might come across is what we call a split infinitive. So if I said he wanted to clearly prove his point to the class, this is great, except it's a split infinitive. An infinitive that splits, because an infinitive is to plus the verb. So anytime I have a word, typically an adverb, trying to sneak its way between the to and the verb, we call a split infinitive. Now, a split infinitive is easy to fix because all we have to do, I'm going to change my pen here, all we have to do is simply move that word clearly somewhere else in the sentence. So you just kind of pick it up and you drop it somewhere. He wanted to prove his point to the class clearly. All right. And so you can move it around if you wanted to. You can say clearly he wanted to prove his point to the class. He wanted clearly to prove his point. He wanted to prove his point clearly to the class, as long as it's not between the to and the prove, because we've created a split infinitive. So Ted, who's here, is asking where did this silly rule come from? And so all silly grammar rules come from the grammar gods. And so there they are. And they don't like us ending sentences in prepositions, so let's change it to from where did this silly rule come? Because that makes more stupid sense. Well, that is somewhat better. So the rule actually comes from Latin because all crazy grammar rules come from Latin. So in Latin, the infinitive is one single word, kind of like Spanish. In Spanish, the infinitive is one single word. In German, it's one single word. In Mandarin Chinese, it's one single, character. It's impossible to split an infinitive in any of those languages. So I'm going to change over to my pen here and just write right here on the screen. I'm going to go with this lovely yellow. That's not what I wanted. Come on, Marsh. There we go. And I'm going to go with this lovely yellow. Think about if I wanted to say comer. For those of you who speak Spanish, means to eat. And if I wanted to say to eat quickly, I would say comer. Ooh, Jeffrey, it's a P. How do I go backwards from here? I don't know. How do you? Oh, you do have eraser. I'm sorry. I've never done this before. I don't usually use this. This is like an adventure. Pen, yellow, good. So we'd say rapido. I think there's a weird accent on one of those words. I don't know. There's an accent on one of them. And so we'd say comer rapido, in this case, meaning to eat quickly. But you cannot say to quickly eat. It's impossible to say to quickly eat in Spanish or German or Mandarin Chinese or Latin, if anyone's still speaking Latin, because it's impossible to put any word between the to and the verb in any of those languages. But when the English language was created, we put this neat little space between the to and the verb, and then we try to sneak in words in here. Sometimes it's an adverb. Sometimes it's a word like to not eat. Even words like not aren't supposed to split your infinitives at all. That's why Shakespeare says to be or not to be, because I don't want to split that infinitive. So be careful of split infinitives, even subtle splits. So it says, jaded and disappointed with NASCAR, Cyan had no desire to watch the race or even read about it the next morning, which sounds great, except it's a very subtle split infinitive. Think about it logically. That word to is being shared. Cyan had no desire to watch the race, or, and then you have even read. And what's happening is that word to is sort of being shared. And so you're saying to watch the race or to even read. So the best thing to do is simply make sure that you use the word to right next to the verb every single time. So we'd say, Cyan had no desire to watch the race or even to read about it the next morning. It's a very subtle split. One last error for you is because be careful of this one. I see this all the time. We should try and get Marsh diverted for class period by mentioning something about NASCAR. Well, look at this. You should try and get. Think about the diagram of that. You're not saying we should two things. We should try and we should get. No, you're not trying and getting. You're saying we should try to get. It's really that. It's an infinitive, and on top of that, it's not even an adverbial infinitive. It's actually a nominal infinitive, so it's just called a nominal infinitive. But you're saying we should try what to get, not try and get. They're not two different active actions. It's one single action. It's to try to get. So be careful of those as you practice fixing dangling infinitives and split infinitives. Do I want to keep my ink annotations? No. If you're still watching the video, why?